Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint watercolor mountains. This is just a really easy way that I like to paint mountains. I'm sure there are various other ways, but I think you'll find this one pretty easy. To begin, I'm just going to start off with a really jagged looking outline of a mountain. All you want to do here is get the basic shape of the top of a mountain, kind of like you're drawing a silhouette. I'm keeping my pencil lines really jagged, and I'm just kind of trying to decide where I want some of the ridges to go and some of the mountain tops to be. And then in the center area of the mountain, I'm just creating a couple more ridges just so I have a general idea of where I want these ridges to be painted. I will actually include a sketch of this piece to follow over on my Patreon page. I'm going to leave a link below to everything, as well as all of the supplies that I use. Okay, so now that the sketch is roughly in, I'm going to just use one single color for this whole piece, and I'm going to use indigo because I figured indigo is a really nice blue, kind of cold, cool shade that kind of matches that whole mountain vibe really well. So all I'm doing is filling in the top area with the blue shade just to create somewhat of a sky and to separate the mountain from the sky. I've let that completely dry, and now I'm just taking an eraser and erasing the top line of my mountain. I do this just because I don't want any pencil lines to show through, and now that I've painted the sky, I have that outline already, not in pencil. I'm using a number 8 brush now, and I've mixed up a slightly darker shade of indigo, and I'm just going to start applying that to the paper. The only real thing that you want to keep in mind when painting these is that you want to apply the color only to the areas that you want to look recessed or in shadow. So I'm starting with the very tip of the mountaintops, and I'm trying to think, if these mountains were three-dimensional, where would they be sticking out from? Which part of the mountain would be closest to me and which would be further away? The parts that are further away or in shadow are going to obviously be the darker color. For the tops of the mountain, you can kind of picture them as triangles, where one side of the triangle is going to be shaded while the other side is not. When the top of the mountain starts to dip down or climb downwards from the top, that area in between the dip and the next jagged area, because it's lower, it's going to be darker as well. This is really tough to explain in words, but hopefully you can see what I mean by watching me paint these areas. And another thing you're going to notice is that I'm always trying to keep the same angle of the dark areas. So you can see that the shadows are kind of on a diagonal path going from the top right to the bottom left. This just makes the mountain depth a little bit more believable, because you want to think of it as if the sun is coming from one side and hitting the surface of one side of the mountain. So now with all of those midtones in place, I'm going back in with a darker mix of indigo, and I'm just reapplying that onto some of the darker areas. You can also see that I'm keeping my brush strokes really loose, and I'm just using the very tip of my brush, and sometimes I'm just really lightly dragging it along the paper, almost sort of like a dry brush effect, like I'm not putting much pressure on the tip of my brush at all. I'm just sort of starting to close up more of that white space and create a little bit more dimension. Mountains are very bumpy. They're made of like rocks and hard surfaces, jagged edges, so I really wanted to represent that with my brush strokes as well. So some of my lines and my colored areas look a little bit squiggly. That's definitely done on purpose. I definitely wanted those different variations of the brush tip. So again, I'm just filling in those white areas and sort of defining more of the jagged edges a little bit better with the darker shade. And then also being sure to add in smaller, tiny little details, even just singular dots and little markings throughout. And as you start to layer your paint, you're really gonna notice it start to come together. Just little by little, you can build your very own mountain. I am keeping in mind though that I don't want to cover up all of the white area. I definitely want to keep a lot of that. So I'm trying to concentrate most of the paint on those darker decreased areas, the areas that I want to stand out, that make the piece a little bit more three-dimensional. And one more time, I'm going in with a darker shade of indigo once everything's dry. Alright, so now that I've done the majority of all of the jagged areas and the peaks, I wanted to start filling in more of those white areas. But I wanted to do this really lightly because, as I said, I still want to keep the white there and visible. But I just want to bring the whole composition together a little bit better. So I've mixed up a really light shade of indigo. This just has a lot more water. And I'm just starting to apply that around some of the darker areas. I'm trying to kind of apply it in more of like a swooping motion, again from the top right down to the bottom left, to kind of keep those angles. And I'm just going to do that all over the entire piece. And I can slightly darken it a little bit more as I go along if I feel like some areas need a little bit more contrast. This is also going to help soften some of the edges. So the idea was to make jagged lines, but maybe some of those areas you want to be a little softer. This can help do that too. And now you can just start adding in any final touches that you want. I'm just adding a tiny bit more of the darker indigo. And when you feel like you're done, that's really all there is to it. I hope that you guys liked the tutorial. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps me out. Stay tuned for the end of the video because I'm going to share something with you in 1 second. But hopefully I will see you guys in the next video. I will be including a sketch of this on my Patreon page. If you want to join, here are all of the things plus other things that you could get with signing up. If you sign up at the end of March, you're going to get this Fox bonus print.